CDS's residence, where the mortal remains of the Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, a hero for India, our top military officer. His mortal remains have been brought to his residence. Polami is joining us with more on that. Polami, a day that we as a country are mourning. We've seen such heartbreaking images.
Salute.
The mortal remains of General Bipin Rawat, India's top military officer, has been brought to his residence. Along with that, you see also the mortal remains of his wife, Mrs. Madhulika Rawat, both of whom were tragically killed in the chopper crash. They will be laid in state now for people to come and pay their last respects to General Rawat and his wife. It's heartbreaking really to see these images, a repeat of which we're going to be seeing so much in the coming days because of the number of personnel that we've lost in the Wednesday chopper crash. Polami Saha is joining us live from the CDS's residence, where his mortal remains will be kept for the next few hours. Polami, it's a day of mourning for everyone here in India. We've just seen such heartbreaking images from the Brar Square crematorium with, in fact, the cremation ceremony of Brigadier Leader, and now the mortal remains of General Rawat, his wife, Mrs. Madhulika Rawat, being brought to their residence. And a moment really that we all offer a prayer to General Rawat's daughters to give them the strength in this time.
That's right. It's a heartbreaking moment really, Akshata, because right here we're standing outside General Bipin Rawat's residence, and just a short while ago the carriage carrying the mortal remains of the first Chief of Defence Staff of India, General Bipin Rawat, and his wife Mrs. Madhulika Rawat were brought in over here in a carriage. They came home, if you may, for the last time, and this is not probably the way their daughters would have expected to be receiving their parents. I mean, it's just heartbreaking to even try and explain the tragedy that they're going through at the moment. In one moment, the two girls have been orphaned, and this is what they're going through right now. They have held themselves together. We've seen some glimpses of them at, of course, the Palam Air Force Station yesterday, when the mortal remains were brought in from Sulur in Tamil Nadu. But the fact that they're just holding it together, that doesn't mean, of course, that they haven't broken down from inside completely. You know, this was a family which was held together by Mrs. Madhulika Rawat, because at the end of the day, General Bipin Rawat had a lot of responsibilities on his plate. He was more dedicated towards his military duties. And at that time, it was Mrs. Madhulika Rawat who was holding the family together, who was, of course, more present for the daughters at home. But of course, the family was a small unit which stayed together as thick as any family does, a very small unit. The daughter, the elder one, had just recently been married just a few years ago, and she had moved to Mumbai, Kritika. And then the other daughter, who is of course here, who was practicing and is practicing law as well, she of course was living with the parents, Tarini. She was here at the residence when the defense minister came in and then gave her...
Beam these live visuals from CDS's residence. Home Minister Amit Shah has just reached there. You can see him paying his respects to General Rawat, laying a wreath there at the mortal remains of General Rawat and offering a floral tribute. We're going to see a lot of political leaders cutting across circles to pay their respects, because General Rawat was a hero who served the nation for over 4 decades in the army. He dedicated his life to the nation. It's only fitting that you see people from all walks of life coming together to pay their last respect, to offer their last salute, to offer one final thank you to General Rawat for his service to the nation. Home Minister Amit Shah there just laid a wreath at General Rawat's mortal remains. He's offering his condolences also to the family members. General Rawat's 2 daughters are standing there by the side. Senior army officials, senior military officials are all gathered there to offer their final salute to General Rawat, someone who led from the front for so many years for them. Was a commanding leader who took charge, who also led his boys with such conviction and inspiration. Something that our forces will never forget. As the first Chief of Defence Staff, he brought forth so many reforms. His commitment to the nation was 100%. His commitment to his comrades, to his fellow army men, to the forces was evident every single time he spoke. And we're going to be seeing a number of dignitaries gathering there at the CDS's residence in the national capital to pay their last respects at the wreath-laying ceremony there. Paulamy is still with us. Paulamy, we just saw the Home Minister paying his last respects to General Rawat. We're expecting a lot of dignitaries, a lot of senior military officials, all of them to gather there to offer one final salute, one final thank you to General Rawat.
That's right. The Home Minister, in fact, is now leaving from the residence of the former CDS, General Bipin Rawat. At the moment, he has paid his respects, and like you said, there will be, of course, a steady flow of dignitaries, of citizens as well, who will come by to General Bipin Rawat's residence in order to pay their final respects, in order to pay their homage to the departed as well. We are expecting Rahul Gandhi also to arrive in a short while from now at about 11 a.m. this morning. He is expected to come here. And then, of course, what the military has said is that between 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. they will be allowing in civilian dignitaries and citizens as well to come pay their last respects to General Bipin Rawat. And then between 12:30 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. military personnel who want to, of course, salute the Chief of Defence Staff as we bid him farewell, they will be allowed to come in as well. At about 2 p.m. is when the carriage carrying the mortal remains of General Bipin Rawat will leave from his residence towards the Brar Square crematorium, and the cremation is expected at 4 p.m. this evening. Full military honours to be given to the first Chief of Defence Staff of India. And the atmosphere, Akshita, over here has been extremely somber. It has been extremely, you can sense this mourning outside this residence. This was not the news that his daughter, who was here at this residence, Tarini, was expecting when, of course, the news started trickling in. Of course, the Prime Minister's office was the first to receive that news. The National Security Advisor informed the Raksha Mantri, who was in Parliament, Parliament at that point of time. They were in fact preparing to go ahead for the cabinet meeting of the day, which was at about 1 p.m. on the day. And just at about 12:20 is when they received the news, is what we learned from our sources, when the National Security Advisor, we saw him run into the Parliament premises. He had come in the morning as well, but for the second time in the day, we did see him run into the Parliament at that point of time. Of course, we weren't very aware at that point of time as to what was the emergency. Why did he look so, disturbed? Why did he look like he didn't want to talk to anybody? And he just made his way through the Parliament gate and straight towards the Raksha Mantri's the office inside the Parliament premises. And after the Raksha Mantri was informed, the Raksha Mantri and the NSA informed the Prime Minister as well. We're just a few rooms away from each other, and that's how the news in fact circulated, that in fact there had been a chopper crash in Tamil Nadu near Kunnur, and then of course the news started trickling in, the disturbing news started trickling in, that most of those who had in fact been on board that ill-fated chopper had suffered injuries which they possibly weren't going to survive. And that's when the news started trickling in as well. So the Prime Minister got a brief just before the cabinet meeting was to start. And Rajnath Singh, we later learned, the cabinet convened, but Rajnath Singh left midway through that cabinet meeting in order to gather more details. He went straight to his office in South Block at the Ministry of Defence in order to get more details from officials over there and the military personnel present at the Ministry of Defence in order to get more details from them. I'll ask my camera person Anil to just keep on the visuals over there at the residence itself. You can see that there are a lot of military personnel who are present at the residence. They've been here all morning, of course, and there are some those who are known to the to the couple, to the departed couple, who are trickling in at the moment. Though I told you, the military has informed us that civilian dignitaries and citizens will be able to come in between 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. This is roughly Supriya Sule, NCP leader, NCP member of Parliament. Supriya Sule is who I see. Sharad Pawar is on our screens right now. Sharad Pawar has in fact reached the residence of the CDS, General Bipin Rawat. He's there on our screens right now. So there are dignitaries who have, of course, started arriving. He has paid his respects. He's waiting, of course, for his vehicle to come pick him up. So there are MPs who have started arriving. That is a delegation of NCP MP. Sharad Pawar, of course, was accompanied by his daughter, Mrs. Supriya Sule, who came in after, of course, the Home Minister had left. And like I said, we are also expecting Congress Member of Parliament Rahul Gandhi to arrive here in a short while from now. He will also be paying his last respects to General Bipin Rawat and Mrs. Madhulika Rawat, who, of course, their mortal remains were brought in from the army-based hospital just a short while ago. They have been laid in state over here inside the residence. The daughters are inside the residence as well. Like I was saying earlier, Kritika, his elder daughter, was not in the city. She, of course, arrived in the city as soon as news came in from Tamil Nadu that there had been a chopper crash, and she has been beside her younger sister. But it is unfathomable the kind of grief the young girls are going through, given that they have been left orphaned after this incident, this accident that the entire nation is trying to make sense of. A court of inquiry, of course, a tri-services inquiry has been ordered by the central government, and Air Marshal Manvendra Singh will be leading that inquiry, and hopefully we'll have answers very soon as to what transpired in those very few minutes. As per the Defence Minister, who made a statement in Parliament yesterday, this was a chopper, the Mi-17 V5 chopper that took off from the Sulur Air Base at about 11:48 a.m. that morning, was scheduled to land at Wellington, at the helipad at Wellington, at about 12:15 p.m. But 20 minutes after takeoff is when ATC lost contact. That was 7 minutes short of landing time. So 7 minutes before the chopper was expected to land at the helipad Wellington, and military officers were, of course, standing by at the helipad because they were going to receive, of course, the Chief of Defence Staff as he landed over there with the contingent that was travelling with him. News came in that the ATC had lost contact with the chopper, And news also trickled in from the locals that there had been a chopper crash, and locals had seen some fire in the forest which they had run towards. The locals, of course, the military will tell you, have been instrumental in trying to rescue as many people as possible. They helped as much as possible without caring for any sort of personal injury, which they did suffer. Minor injuries, minor burn injuries, they did suffer. They tried to get in water, douse the fire that the chopper had caught. But unfortunately, despite the best of their efforts, and then the local administration coming into the picture, and then of course the military bringing in its own resources from Wellington as well, unfortunately they were not able to save the lives of 13 of the 14 who were on board. Group Captain Varun Singh, as we've been reporting, of course, continues to battle for his life at the Command Hospital in Bengaluru at the moment. So visitors, dignitaries who wish to pay their last respects to General Bipin Rawat and Mrs. Madhulika Rawat are, of course, trickling in at the moment at the Kamraj Road residence of the CDS. Akshita, back to you.
Saha reporting there from outside the Chief of Defence Staff's residence. General Bipin Rawat's mortal remains, his wife Mrs. Madhulika Rawat's mortal remains have been kept there for people to come and pay their last respects. Home Minister Amit Shah just visited. He also had NCP Supriya Sule. Expect a lot of members of parliament present there in the national capital to come and pay their respects personally to a hero of the nation. Our hearts really go out to General Rawat's daughters as well, Kritika and Tharani. This must be such a challenging time for them. They've lost both their parents in the chopper crash, both their mother and their father. It's heartbreaking to really imagine the grief and the situation that they're in right now, the emotions that they'll be going through. But as I mentioned yesterday at the Palam airport, as the Prime Minister, the NSA, the Defence Minister all stood there with the family in this time of grief, they put forth a face of such bravery, of such strength in the face of this kind of an unbelievable tragedy. We're also showing on our screens the images from just a few moments ago from the Brar Square crematorium of the ceremony, the cremation ceremony of Brigadier Leader as well. And those images of his wife holding on to the tricolour with such pride, holding on to the portrait of her husband with such emotion, hugging his portrait one last time. Those images really tell you about the kind of loss that they've suffered and how for years to come this is a loss that they will never be able to overcome. We as a nation will offer our tributes, we offer our prayers, we offer all the strength that we can. But this family will have to live through this tragedy day in and day out, remembering the loss of their loved one. But the strength that these army families show in the face of this kind of a tragedy, in the face of this kind of a crisis, always is something that makes you marvel at the emotional restraint that they show and how they truly live by the motto of serving the nation, of putting India first, of putting the nation first. And that's what perhaps explains how these families show such grit and determination in the face of an unbelievable tragedy. And that rings true for the daughters of General Rawat as well, both of whom are having to deal with the loss of their parents so suddenly in the chopper crash on Wednesday. And Pauline, through it, you know, as a nation, we've offered our condolences, but through it, you've also had Defence Minister Rajnath Singh personally speaking, personally being there for the family.
That's right. The Defence Minister has been with the families through this entire tragedy. He has been communicating with the families of the deceased. He, in fact, was the first to arrive here at General Bipin Rawat's residence, and asked Anil to stay with the visuals of the residence because the VVIPs and dignitaries are trickling in over here. He, in fact, came in within a few hours of that news breaking at about 3 p.m. on that afternoon. He, in fact, was here at the residence of General Bipin Rawat in order to speak to his youngest daughter, who was present at the residence, in order to, we believe at that point of time, or even though official confirmation, Akshita, hadn't come in and we were awaiting that, we believe at that point of time to probably convey to Tarni Rawat the severity of the accident which has taken place, the enormity of it, and possibly conveyed the unfortunate news to her at that point as well. Later, he was followed by Army Chief General Naravane, who arrived here at that residence shortly after the Defence Minister had left in order to, of course, communicate personally to her what he had learned from on the ground in Kunnur in Tamil Nadu. And that is how, of course, the daughters unfortunately learned officially from the highest authorities in government and military about the most unfortunate piece of news that they would have ever received in their lives. And it's just heartbreaking to think what they're going through. In one moment, they've lost both their parents. They've lost both their parents, and that is something everyone can, the sort of loss, the sense of grief, the sense of heartbreak that they are feeling at the moment is something that each one can identify with at this point of time. But they are the ones who are going through it as we speak right now. Of course, holding it together, keeping it together, because today is going to be a very difficult day for them. Yesterday is when they saw the mortal remains of their father and their mother at the Palam Air Force Station, where the mortal remains landed over there. Again, dignitaries came by to pay their respects, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and they had to, of course, hold their composure. But as you have been saying, Akshata, it's probably very characteristic of Fauji families that they know how to handle themselves in moments of grief, in moments of absolute tragedy and difficulty. They probably prepare themselves all their lives to hear the worst news possible. They have that sense of courage, they have that sense of bravery, grit inside of them. But in this case, Akshata, it's unfathomable because they've lost both their parents in one moment. One accident has taken away both their parents, and that is something which nobody can, at this point of time, even imagine the kind of grief that those girls are going through inside. But today they have to hold it together. We don't know if they'll break down when they finally lay their parents to rest at Brar Square crematorium later this evening. But today, as dignitaries, as citizens, as military personnel trickle in order to pay their last respects, and the entire nation watches them, they're holding it together to the best of their ability. We see other MPs who are arriving from other parties as well, Akshata, at the moment in order to pay their last respects to General Bipin Rawat and Mrs. Madhulika Rawat. General Rawat, of course, the first Chief of Defence Staff, took office in January 2020. Before that, of course, held office as the 27th Chief of Army Staff as well. We're seeing MPs right now arrive over here. We're seeing, of course, MPs from Telangana arrive over here. BJP MP and BJP President from the state, Bandi Sanjay, who has in fact arrived over here. So they are all coming in at the moment in order to pay their last respects and tributes to General Bipin Rawat. He, in fact, Akshata, was in Parliament just 2 days ago, on the 6th of December, I'm talking about, before this incident transpired. He had come in. Of course, that was the day, in fact, when the Home Minister was making a statement on the Nagaland firing incident in Parliament, and a lot of us presume that maybe General Bipin Rawat has come to brief one of the government on some respect of it before the Home Minister makes a statement in both houses of Parliament. So we did ask him at that point of time, are you here to speak on the Nagaland issue? Will you speak on the same to the cameras? He, of course, said, no, I'm not here to speak about that. I'm here to meet the Finance Minister. And then, of course, the traditional salute, even to the media persons as he went in. And that's the last glimpse that the media, of course, caught of him just 2 days before this tragic news trickled in. While, of course, all of us were inside Parliament itself, news trickling in that a chopper had crashed in Tamil Nadu, which was carrying senior defence officials at that point of time. When we spoke to some members of the ruling establishment, they said that the news was about defence officials as well. And you can see over here, Anil, if you could just pan the camera, there are some citizens who are present over here in order to, of course, pay their respects to General Bipin Rawat, who are in fact raising slogans and saying General Bipin Rawat Amar Rahe. In fact, the roundabout which leads to this Kamraj Road section, in fact, has posters of General Bipin Rawat and Mrs. Madhulika Rawat, which says Amar Rahe. So, as you can see, Akshata, on our screens right now, VIPs continue to come in to the residence. Citizens will be able to go in and pay their last respects between 11:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. as well. Rahul Gandhi is expected in a short while from now, from what the Congress office has conveyed to us, that he will be coming in at about 11 a.m. This morning, Akshata. So it's unimaginable to even try and hazard a thought as to what those daughters of General Rawat and Mrs. Madhulika Rawat are going through right now, as VVIPs and dignitaries and the citizenry, of course, will be trickling in order to pay their final respects to their father and mother, Akshata.
Those slogans that are being chanted there, Paul, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have gathered there outside the CDS's residence. Really brings back the tribute video that we saw yesterday in Tamil Nadu of locals gathering in such large numbers. And it was such a fitting tribute, really, as a thank you, as a message of gratitude to General Rawat and all the other heroes who we have lost in this chopper crash when they screamed Veera Vanakkam. It was such a moment of pride and essentially puts forth the message, perhaps what we're all trying to convey here, of our gratitude, our thanks to General Rawat for the way he was committed to bettering our nation, to bettering our forces, the way he was committed in serving the nation. For 4 decades, he's in fact been serving the country, and that's why today you have this outpouring of grief. You have so many dignitaries, so many Indians coming together to say thank you, to pay their final salute to a hero like General Rawat. There are so many highs, really, when you talk about General Rawat and his career, his service really to the nation, Paulami, as the Chief of Defence Staff. And I'm sure a lot of people are wondering who the next CDS is going to be. That's a discussion for another time, because today, we're celebrating the legacy of General Rawat, of all that he's done to better the nation, because there was one single commitment that he had through his life, Paulami, and that was to serve the nation, which is why perhaps he rose to the ranks also of the Chief of Defence Staff. Absolutely. You know, you speak to various personnel of the military serving and retired, and when you talk to them about General Bipin Rawat, what they tell you is that he was a doer. He believed in taking tough decisions. He believed in taking probably unpopular decisions as well. But if that meant that it is going to better our forces, it is going to strengthen the hands of our forces, he was unwavering. Nobody could in any sense deter him from that goal, from that commitment that he would have made to himself. He could have taken a lot of uncharacteristic decisions that may have not sat well with some within the fraternity, but that was not something that General Bipin Rawat was looking at. He was not looking at pleasing people, but he only thought about the forces. He only thought about the military and how could he possibly better the military. And that is why he was chosen to, in fact, assume the role of India's first Chief of Defence Staff. It was a long pending demand to have a CDS, a role of a CDS who basically would, in fact, look at better coordination between the three services, and it was General Bipin Rawat who was chosen in order to assume that position. He had 1 year to go before his tenure as CDS came to an end, but he was working relentlessly in order to better the forces, bring in more resources, and like I said, strengthen the hands of the resources of the forces as well. So that is what General Bipin Rawat is described to by people. But if you just keep the military man aside, and if I think of the man that we interacted with, for instance, in Parliament just 2 days ago, when he saluted even the media personnel, typical to a man in uniform, but
in that moment, the thought that crossed my mind was that was General Bipin Rawat, and that was how he was, a man in military uniform all the time and saluting all the time. It was a very humble gesture, it was a very gentle gesture as well, and in the manner that he spoke as well. It was very soft spoken, but you could always feel the sense of determination, the sense of clarity in his voice as he spoke as well. A man who has had his thoughts extremely clear. He knew exactly what his goals were, he knew exactly what he wanted to do, he knew exactly how he wanted to proceed in his role as Chief of Defence Staff. He wanted to do a lot for the military, for our forces before his tenure as CDS came to an end. So that was his goal as well. In fact, I was listening to our colleagues as well, who of course interacted with him more as defence correspondents, had more opportunity to interact with him. And all they said is that when you speak about the fact that, India will have to now, find another CDS, they of course said that if it was left to General Bipin Rawat, he would say, get on with it, stop with the mourning and find a new CDS immediately, because that role can't be left vacant. He was a doer, he meant business, and that is what he was doing in his position as India's first Chief of Defence Staff. Now this is a family. General Rawat in fact came from a family. He was a second generation army man. His father of course rose to the rank of Lieutenant General, and General Bipin Rawat of course became the longest serving 4-star general that India has seen, and then of course assuming the role of India's first Chief of Defence Staff as well. So this is a family that is rooted in the armed forces. It knows the kind of challenges, the kind of risks that come with assuming and donning the uniform, the olive green uniform. But to have lost General Bipin Rawat and Mrs. Madhulika Rawat to such an unfortunate tragedy is something that is going to be very difficult for them to, of course, wrap their heads around and then, of course, come to terms with as well. Coming to terms with it, of course, I think it's going to be impossible for children who've lost their parents, both their parents in one accident. It's never going to be something that will ever sink in, but they're of course trying to make sense of it and possibly hoping that they get answers to what happened in those last few moments when the chopper of course lost contact with the ATC at the Sulur Air Base. Akshita.
The fact that you have such a long line of dignitaries, of Indians coming forward to pay tribute there to General Bipin Rawat at his residence itself speaks volumes of his service to the nation and of how he's contributed to the country for the last many years. As I mentioned, a single track commitment that he had in his life to better India, and that's what stands out today. We're celebrating the legacy of General Rawat. I'm slipping into a very short break here on India Today. We'll be right back getting you all those live updates.